Well, good morning guys and welcome to the show. Today we have one of those question and answer videos. You guys ask us this question all the time. I've answered it hundreds of times, and I know we've actually shot this video before, but today we're going to take it a little bit differently because we're going to answer it in the way that you guys ask it. And that is, I have a specific size power wire. What size braided loom do I need to go over it? I have all the looms that we use here and all the size power wires that you could possibly need to run through this. So let's take a look. Starting with the power wire size, 18 gauge primary wire, 12 gauge primary wire, 10 gauge, 8 gauge, 4 gauge, and 0 gauge. The looms we have are 3/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch, 3/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch, and 1/8 of an inch. Depending on what you're running, multiples will work in different situations. When you're looking at one piece of primary wire, the 1/8 inch is going to be your best. It'll go over it, shield the wire just fine. You also get plenty of flexibility. Moving on to the 12 gauge, it will also fit. You will see a little bit more of the red or the color of the wire inside because you're stretching it. It still has really good flexibility. If you take the 1/4 inch, it goes over it much easier. It is kind of loosely fitting, tons of flexibility. It'll stay darker because it's not stretched out. 10 gauge will go into the 1/4 inch. Enter it just as easily as the 12 gauge. It's just as flexible and also stays just as dark. It's not even really stretching at this point. This is more the size that this would require. If we put the 8 gauge in, it will go in, but now we'll see more of that red color of the wire because this is the maximum it will stretch out. It is going to be a little bit harder for it to get on because it is a tighter. That brings us to 3/8. 3/8 will easily flow over an 8 gauge wire. It's not stretching it at all. This is the minimum size of 3/8, so it stays nice and dark all the way through. You can't even tell it's a red wire. 4 gauge in the 3/8. This is what I like to run when I'm running 4 gauge, is I put 3/8 over it. It still stays plenty dark. It's still nice and loose. It does take a little bit longer to put it on because it is a tighter weave, but it's not stretching the weave. This is like the maximum that this weave can go. As the tubes get bigger from the small size, there's more weaving in it, less opportunity to see the color shine through. Moving on to the 1/2 inch. The 1/2 inch is going to go like butter over a 4 gauge. This size here doesn't even stretch the braiding at all. It's the loosest it can be. You can still actually see the crease in it. There's no color penetration at all because the weave isn't even moving. This is like if you just took the tube and went like this 4 gauge would fit right into it. Moving on to the 0 gauge. This is going to be a little tougher to get on there because it is super tight. You can start to see the color shine through. The nice thing about 1/2 inch, it is definitely the most popular size because it'll go over a 0 gauge and it'll go over a 4 gauge. If you just want to buy one roll, buying the 1/2 inch is definitely the way to go. 0 gauge isn't all that flexible to begin with. When having to do a long run of this, the 1/2 inch is going to make it a little bit harder to move. Typically in the back of the car, around the amp rack, we will use 1/2 inch, but when we're doing the longer runs through the car, we'll switch over to the 3/4. And this size here is the diameter of the 3/4. It just goes right over it. There's no blockage, there's no color seepage, there's no stretching at all. It fits in here nice and loose, goes through the car really easily. It'll get around all those turns and twists, up into the dash and all that. So those are the power wire sizes. Let's take a look at some of the speaker sizes. For speaker wire, the only one we run where there is a positive and negative is the standard 16 gauge stinger wire. For everything else, we run individual wires. This would be a 12 gauge, this would be a 10 gauge, and this would be an 8 gauge. Starting with the 16 gauge, the 1/8 inch is out of the question. None of these are going to work on 1/8 inch. Jumping right into the 1/4 inch, jumping into the 1/4 inch, the 16 gauge wire will slide right over it. As you can see, there is some color seepage here. I'm not really worried about that. I'm more worried about the insulation factor. It's still just as flexible. Moving up to the 12 gauge, we're going to jump into the 3/8. 12 gauge goes over it very easily, keeps it nice and flexible. One of the reasons why we switched to dual like this is to have the right and left easy bendability, where when you have a wire like this, you can't go that direction. The 3/8 will also take the 10 gauge. It's not that much bigger than the 12 gauge. It still gives you plenty of flexibility, hides all the color, looks really nice. Moving up to 2/8 gauge though, this is where you're going to really max this one out. You can still get away with it, as you can see, but now the color is starting to shine through. Move up to the 1/2 inch, and you get the nice color blockage as well as that same flexibility. Really nice. 3/4, really only going to be good for 0 gauge, or if you have to run a dual 4 gauge. Those are our combinations as far as how we run them in the car. 1/2 inch is like the money stuff. If you just want to buy one size, it's going to work in pretty much everything, get yourself 1/2 inch. Well, there you go. If you're looking for what size, what wire, what should I do, now you know. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you have a wonderful night, and we'll see you later next time. Bye.